Hello everyone, this is Apex, and you're watching the #1 ZywOo hater in the world.
Do you want some delicious energy formula with 10% off and 10% off everything on their website that I recommend? I think's delicious. Maybe try Gamer Subs. How about cherry limesicle? That's a delicious sweet cherry flavour. I think goes down really smooth. Obviously the zero sugar, the come up's really nice. It's way better than all those other ones that are out there, the other powders and the other drinks. I mean, for a start off, this comes as a powder, so it's got loads and loads of portions. I think there's like 100 in there, which is quite small, as you can see. It doesn't leave like a sediment like all those other powders do. It actually dissolves really, really well, and it has a smooth flavour. Doesn't taste all chemically. So check out with the code Thorin, Thorin, gamersubs.gg, and get 10% off everything on their website. They've also got an AFK blend to help you go to sleep, much like I imagine will happen during the paiN versus Mongols semi-final, unless you're from Mongolia or Brazil. So we're into the semi-finals of the Blast. So I almost said Paris major there, because it does feel like I'm back at Blast Paris, doesn't it? Like, these are really the four teams we've got at the end, but oh well. We'll get to the narrative parts later, I guess. But actually, you know what? Let's do the rant now. Let's just do it now, shall we? Like, spoiler, even if ZywOo wins this major, yes, I will point out it was another weak major. Think who he would have beaten to win this major. I'll do all four possibilities, right? 3. So he's beaten, I'm just trying to think about the Swiss stage here first. VP, who most people would have said has no chance to win the major. I mean, people thought I was edgy, even putting them to be like a playoff team. He beat, it's in series play. Namiga and 3D Max were BO1 teams, lost to Legacy to BO1, then in the quarters beat Na'Vi. Now on paper, history will remember that as a much better opponent than it was, because that was the team of the year last year, that was the dominant team last year, that was a major winner last year. That is not like one of the elite teams of all time, but it would be an all-time great team. They've earned that status. It's just they're not like that at all right now. Then you've got MOUZ in the semis now. Assuming he beats them, they are a true contender. But for me, they're number 3 on the contender list. Listen, 3's still good. Anything in basically the top 4, still pretty legit, right? Unfortunately, after you beat them, you either play Mongols, who, as far as I'm concerned, still has never beaten like one of the contender teams at a tournament in an arena on LAN. They just beat a FaZe clan that had never played a LAN with this lineup before. Or they'll play paiN, who were complete noobs to the major playoffs, incredibly inexperienced. And both of those rosters, by the way, you could argue have choking issues. I mean, I would say in paiN's case, it was more that in the past they didn't have the firepower. I think it's more inexperienced now. I don't think they've had enough that you can really say it's choking. But you wouldn't expect them to do anything in the playoffs ever with this core. So the idea of Vitality... Now, look... It's not quite as simple, because here's what's different from Blast Paris when they won against that absolute banana cop squad of teams. And by the way, technically, they did once beat a top 10 team. I think Cloud9 was ranked like 7th maybe or something when they beat them at Copenhagen 2024. But the joke is, part of that rating might even have been decay from before they sold She-Roll to Spirit. But even so, I actually thought they were like maybe the 10th best team or something. But never beaten basically an elite team, except now if they beat MOUZ. And probably the saddest thing about that is, at least at Blast Paris... I could, no, the other way around. At least at this major, I will say, what does still make it mega that Vitality wins is, look, I still don't think anyone would have beaten Vitality in a BO3, by the way. I think Falcons, for me, was the only team I really thought had like the mental and the map pool and the firepower to do it. I think MOUZ lacks all of those things. But the big thing is, at least Vitality is uber giga dominant anyway in the scene and might end up being the best team to ever play CS. So in that scenario, you're not really going to get a team as good or better than you to play against, are you? There isn't one right now. But Blast Paris back then, they weren't even actually like the pure #1. At the time, it was debatable whether it was like them or Heroic, FaZe won the Grand. There was all sorts going on in the scene back then. It was all mixed up. They'd only won like 2 events or something with that lineup. I think it was like EPL and then they won IM Rio, didn't they? So I actually think back then it looked worse, but this doesn't look great. Because remember, I'm going to make a whole video about this topic. You know that whole thing like, yeah, but they can only beat who was put in front of them. Always ask this question before you let an idiot derail, deflect, and try and do whataboutism. Always ask the question, what is the framing of the discussion? The discussion about Vitality goes, was it an easy major to win? You can't then go, well, no, because you can only beat... No, it was. By definition, some major has to be the easiest, and some have to be easier, and some have to be medium, and some have to be harder, and some have to be hard, very hard, and some have to be the hardest. That's how it works. In the same way as even though Vitality or Astralis could be the best team ever, someone has to be the worst player in the team. Someone has to be worse than the others. It doesn't matter that they're all excellent and they all win and they're all doing a good job of their roles. Someone is the worst. Learn how relative terms work and how language works. So crucially, when people do that, yeah, but that's not the framing. No one's saying ZywOo could never win a major. What they're saying is, you tell me ZywOo was the greatest player of all time, and that baked into that is the implication that he's the biggest factor ever to make you win tournaments. The biggest and most important tournament ever is the major. So if his major currently is the weakest one ever, and then he has like 2 of the bottom 3 or 4 ever won ever, then yes, that would not help his GOAT case very much compared to any of the following. Simple, by the way, has on paper one of the harder majors to win. Look at who he actually beat, including ZywOo. Then you could go and look at, he beat Nico, he beat fucking Shiro and Apex, Axile. Then you could go and look at some of Astralis weren't that good on the way up there, but I actually think the one they won against VP was pretty legit. Fnatic has some bangers back in the day. There are people who have some very good majors. So that is the context of that discussion. You know what? Even though it's actually this is what stats and trivia are supposed to be for. They start a conversation, you then think about an answer. They don't end a conversation. So I wouldn't say, how could ZywOo be the GOAT? Because spoiler, by the way, I don't even think you have to win the major to be GOAT. I had Simple as the GOAT before he won the major. But I wouldn't say, how could ZywOo be the GOAT if the only 2 majors he won were 2 of the worst in terms of the opposition? No, what I would say is this. I would say to you, the guy who claims he's the GOAT, it is something you're going to have to investigate and find an answer to as to why, if he's the GOAT, even in majors where he was the favourite, like against a Vanguard at Starladder Berlin, for example, why did he never win those majors with harder opposition and he only won the majors with the easy opposition? It's just a great question to start a discussion. Now, what's funny is, if anyone comes in who is a ring worshipper and goes, actually, ZywOo sucks because he only fucking won the 2 shit majors, then I would go, you fucking idiot. Have you never seen this guy play? He's immediately in your top 5 ever to play any version of Counter-Strike, probably higher. Again, it depends how much do rings matter to you, how much does like beating the hardest opposition matter to you, how much do these things matter? But if you want to look at body of work, it's why I always say Nico's underrated. I mean, by the way, you can always tell nobody believes in body of work. Nobody believes, in rings and accomplishments, because they tell you when ZywOo gets to number 1 that being the player who wins the major is what makes him GOATed now, and having the most MVPs makes him GOATed. But before that, they didn't say Device was the GOAT, and Device had those things. He'd never been world number 1. To be fair, they didn't have it on every year, but he has won more majors than anyone except Dupree, who isn't even in this conversation, and he had the record for MVPs, and he actually had it for a long time if you go and take out those bullshit online MVPs. So anyway, the point is, that's why for me, sadly, this is probably the most sobering day in a major since Heroic lost that match to Gamer Legion, and I realised, wait a minute, Vitality's going to win a major against fucking Acor and Kios. What? And that happened. And they still almost went to 3 maps, by the way. That's as bad as losing to beating a Vanguard, which wasn't that great. But at least Astralis beat fucking Team Liquid and RG in that tournament. So I think the sad thing is, what I've realised really is this. I love the Mongols. People know I do. But this isn't getting over choking. You haven't beaten a top team yet. This is a team that, in fact, by the way, you should in theory have beaten them in the fucking Swiss. So my biggest problem with this scenario for Vitality is I actually realised we were all on copium. This is how you know Simple's cultural impact is impossible. Because that mixed with FaZe's cultural impact and how much we all love like Carrigan and Rain, and I'm a big fan of Elish, means that we all kind of just were huffing, not even copium, hopium, that as long as FaZe made the final, then it's okay. Because at least it is all like legendary players. It's kind of like what I was doing with Navi. It's all legendary players and great names and historic people to beat. And it does matter. You know what? The Lakers that Michael Jordan beat in 1991 didn't even have Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. There was injuries in the team. They weren't the same Lakers that dominated the 80s. But it's a big deal to beat Magic Johnson and the Lakers, who've won the Western Conference. That means something. That scalp. That's important. That is the passing of the torch. Except it isn't, is it? Because he didn't take the torch. Basically, the torch was almost gone out at that point in time. So in this scenario, you do want them to beat someone epic. You know what? Even if it wasn't FaZe, I'd have taken Furia. Look, I'd have bitched about it because Follow would have just gotten some cheap-ass final. But the Molodoi guy was popping off. He looked like he had some skills. I don't actually know that Yakinda ever crossed over into being a truly great player, but he was a very good player at one point in time. At least it'd be fun to see him mixing it up right. You do have kSorata, who I do think is one of the greatest riflers to ever play any version of Counter-Strike. Incredibly talented. I think he's more talented and skilled than coldzera. Just has never been in the team, never been in a position, and probably isn't as clutch in a big game performer, I don't know. So I think that would have been kind of a fucking cool storyline in its own way. What you're left with now is minnows against maybe the biggest shark to ever exist in Counter-Strike. Unless, and this is the one last thing to hype you, so that's why it's in this video, unless MOUZ comes good. Because do you know what? I notice a lot of people pick up on my narratives after a while. Then once it becomes accepted, they think they invented the narrative, not me. I always told you that even though, look, I did give up on this MOUZ quite a long time ago. Although, to be fair, when they added Spinks, who I always thought was underrated, that actually gave me a bit of new life for them. But the reason I gave up on them is when teams consistently fail in the mental arena, not preparation, not individual ability, not fucking calling style or whatever, when teams fail like that, I do think, I understand why people go, I'm out, you'll never win. But what they don't get is the lesson that Astralis taught us. I mean, even Team Liquid taught us to some degree, which is if you're the ones who are mainly choking, not actually worst players in a team, if you ever figure that out, first of all, if you ever half figure it out, more like sort of MOUZ has done this year, you'll start to win titles and win big series too. Then, if you ever fully figure it out, you just win everything. Like Astralis, like at one point Team Liquid did for 4 months, you just win everything. And MOUZ, this lineup on paper, theoretically could do that. I do have an issue with the fact that they don't have an all-time great IGL. Even so, if you were going to design a squad with players that fit the pieces and worked and did it as a team and stuff, this is a pretty good setup for a squad. I also don't think Falcons have an all-time great IGL, by the way. So there is still factors against them. But you know what? At least there's a chance. Now, obviously, when we get to it, the intangible is they've been beaten down so many times by Vitality. I don't think they even believe they can win this match. But we will get to that. We'll get to that. So we'll dive into this first match. It's obviously going to be MOUZ against Vitality, which, as I mentioned before, we've actually seen loads of this matchup. So this year alone, I have to click head-to-head to get more of them. So let's go all the way down. So this year, by the way, this is after Spinks has joined the lineup. There you go. So these are all real series between the two teams. They played at Pro League in the group stage. It was a massive stomp by Vitality. They played in the playoffs of Pro League. Wasn't this the final? Yes, it was the final, and it was a BO5. It was a 3-0 stomp. They tore 5 off without them even getting double digits. Then they played in the group stage at Blast Lisbon. It was a very close, but still 2-0 for Vitality. They hadn't lost a map to them, by the way. At this point in time, they had won 7 maps in a row. They then went 8 in a row, including a 13-0 to start the best-of-5 Lisbon final. Then after that, you had 2 really close... Finally, the 2 maps that MOUZ won, they won 2 really close maps. Then the other 2... Actually, this Train one, it was a better game than this shows, but these were just stomps again from Vitality. Then you go to Blast Rivals, which I think was like semis, wasn't it? Upper bracket final, there you go. Group, it was the group final, there you go. That was a 2-1, so at least MOUZ won a map again. They won a Mirage, so they've won 2 Mirages and a Dust 2. Or every time, pretty close. But fair enough to not even let Vitality get double digits. Beaten convincingly though on the other 2. Then at IM Dallas before this event, you remember they played in the final? Pimp had that awful take that MOUZ Sports was going to win it. Listen, he's trying stuff, boys. Maybe he's trying to be a WWE character. I never give a take. I don't actually believe it, by the way. Not that I always pick the favourite. I picked Team Liquid have been that ESL New York over FaZe, but they hadn't played them 1 million times before. I think this is a whack take. So anyway, that was a 3-0 as well. 0 maps won. They got 1 map close. And this reasonably close, I guess. So this is a really sad set of circumstances for MOUZ. Like, how can they possibly believe they win? And by the way, where the fuck did they go on the veto? Like, they didn't even win the Mirage there. That then went back the other way. So there's going to be a lot of problems in this series. What we will start with is the veto. Spoiler, nobody has a good veto into Vitality. But even so, let's run through it. So if we look at the last time they played, Oh, it's BO5, so I'm going to have to go to the BO3s. It's also, oh, by the way, that also gives Mouse a chance. A BO3 gives them a much better chance to win. To be fair, they could have, early on, they could have won this one. It's not impossible you could have won this one. So let's go to that veto. Group A game. Mouse removed Anubis. You know why? They always remove Anubis. Then you have Vitality removes Ancient. You can guess why. They always remove Ancient. So those two are almost guaranteed to happen. It is almost guaranteed that Mouse will remove Anubis and Vitality will remove Ancient. By the way, that even, in my opinion, helps Vitality more than Mouse. Anubis is not the best map of Vitality. It's actually the 6th best map. I don't care what the win rate says. I'm talking about comfort, style, whether they pick it. They don't ever pick it. Meanwhile, Mouse, if you've ever seen this roster, they don't have a great win rate now, but they have always had comfort on that map. And it's always been one of the maps where exertion does so much for you on the T side. And then Yimfat wins the fucking clutches, blah, blah, blah. You get the rest. So you have to do those two permas, basically. Then when you come to your pick, both teams actually like to pick Nuke the most, believe it or not. And the problem is, not only is Vitality better, but they only played it, let's see, 1, 2, twice, and it was a clap for Vitality. So if you're Mouse, you can't pick that. You didn't last time, to be fair. You picked Mirage. In fact, no one picked Nuke on this one. So maybe Nuke goes again to the float. So last time, Mouse picked Mirage. I do think on paper, that's probably the best map for them. If they can't get an inch, I think Mirage is the map they have to pick. The problem is, Vitality is extremely good on Mirage. It's not a map, admittedly, they themselves pick. But if you don't know, on Mirage, they have beaten... they barely lost to Mouse at that time. They barely lost to Falcons. They've beaten Spirit. Falcons had to beat them in overtime. They beat Mouse a gang of times. They beat Spirit a couple of times. They beat Mongols a couple of times. They just win on this map, boys. I mean, they win on every map in theory, don't they? So you pick Mirage. I'm still going to edge that to Vitality. Then Vitality picks Inferno. It was the map they had the crazy win streak on. It's clearly a favourite of Apex's. I also think they like the fact that Zero doesn't have to AWP on both sides on it. I think they like that factor. You look at their squad, it's a really good squad, much like an Aurora for banging into the sites. They have an exceptional win rate on that one. You'd be very favoured to win that one. So already I've got you 2-0. But then let's imagine it goes to a third map. So Mouse removes Dust 2. I think that will happen, by the way, because it's a mega map for Vitality. It's also a map, by the way, that Vitality picks after they pick Nuke in series, most often. So you take that away from them. And then what you decide is, with Train and Nuke left over, Vitality gets the choice whether they want it to go. Now, the problem is, you have comfort in theory on Nuke. So that's why they veto Nuke and go to the Train. Or if they want to surprise you, they go to Nuke. But I think they just veto and go to Train, where, again... They do occasionally, they picked it like one time in the last 15 or something. They will occasionally pick it, but it's more if they're forced to it or they'll take it as a decider. They're just a better team on that. Like, let's look at Mouse on Train. Slapped by Vitality twice. Wrecked Liquid, barely beat Aurora. Aurora has not been good on that map, by the way. Liquid's just whatever on it. So it's actually kind of a depressing veto, all in all. Like, where am I supposed to get angles here? What can I even do differently, by the way? Like, tell me a veto you could do differently if you're Mouse. So, as I said, you can only really pick Mirage or Nuke. They're your two best chances. Dust 2, you can get wins sometimes against the other squads. You will not beat Vitality on that map. I think you're in so much trouble. You're in so much trouble. You should lose every single map. Then let's go and look at the players, shall we? So you're going to see, listen, this is what's sad for Mouse. They're an excellent team. They're a very good team. If Vitality doesn't win every tournament, especially if someone else beats Vitality, I could see a world where they win more S-tier trophies. But here's your problem. Last 3 months, we have a good sample size. 58 maps. We'll do a month before as well, just to show you. 58 maps over the last 3. By the way, yes, a problem already is you don't have a superstar like Ziwu. In my opinion, you don't even have a player as good as Robs. But... you have over here this scenario where maybe the top end's not that crazy. But you know what? The bottom end's pretty decent. And then actually, all in all, this is good enough if you have a decent map pool, which they do. If you go to a month, doesn't really improve matters. Crucially, though, you've got a decently strong T-side team. Remember, Spinks is lurking, but Even though the KD's not great, Exertion's doing good impact there. They've got a pretty nice squad overall on T side. More of a CT fragging team, obviously. That's where Tosh is tearing up. Yimfat's getting his kills there. Or Yimpat, as they're probably supposed to say it. Pretty good numbers all in all, but nothing exceptional. You go to opening T side, they rely so much on my man Exertion, and he's not even at 40% success rate. That's not amazing form for this guy. Then you got Brawler next, and he's even worse. He's getting a kill a third of the time in the opening scenario. And Spinks is just a lurker, so those are actually like normal numbers for a really good lurker. Then you go to Vitality, and it just becomes more of a bomber. So we've got, let's see, 57 maps of play here. 57 maps, right? You can't beat that. Not only the ratings, because I'm not that big a fan. Look at the KD. If you don't know, Z-MOUZ at something like, what would that be like? 80% more, plus minus. T-side, they're way too good. CT side, you can't do shit. Opening kills. The most is Flames, and he's at 40, which isn't that insane, but he's obviously more of like a player, like a guy who makes shit happen. Then you got Z who's going to god tier trade on him. This is unbelievable as a number, by the way. And sometimes be in the middle of the pack and semi-lurk. Then the rest of them just share. And even Apex is above your fucking Exertion for fuck's sake. Oh, he's taking way less attempts, obviously. Oh, and by the way, don't worry. They also know how to fucking flashbang people. This is so fucking difficult to win this match. I genuinely don't know what the angle is to win. Like, how am I ever supposed to find a way that I win this match if I'm Mouse? I almost have to, like, pray Z-MOUZ plays badly, or Z-MOUZ plays well, but in a way where it doesn't actually, like, affect the rounds, that you get the kills, but you don't win the clutch, you don't get the round kill and you die early. Or, I guess, like, Rops could have a mega off series. Oh, fucking hell, what could even happen? Exactly. It's so tough to even come up with ways for it to happen. Because the reason why you feel more like, I mean, look, Spirit doesn't beat Vitality, but at least you could have imagined Donkashira going mental. You can obviously imagine Nico and fucking Monacy going mental and having a chance to win. They basically were the team that was one round from beating Vitality to BO5. They're long gone. They're watching in the fucking stands or on Twitch like the rest of us. So you're in so much trouble. So spoiler, that's just Vitality all day long. Now let's do the other one, shall we? So I already did all the paths, by the way, so I'm not doing that now. Now, paiN versus Mongols. If you go down here. Oh, they played before. This doesn't count. If you don't know, this was way back at PGL Cluj Poker, and look at the roster of paiN. So they had Kawes instead of the newly signed DGT. Just not the same roster. Kawes fucking sucked, by the way. But let's look at that veto just for a second. It's not going to be the same with the switch. Like, for example, paiN removed Ancient. They removed Train now. Mongols also removes Train. Now, that's actually a good sign for Mongols, for paiN, by the way. That I think they can get Mongols to ban the Train. You had an Inferno pick, a Just 2 pick, Mirage left over. It ended up being like a close first game, so it could have been a 2-0 for paiN, but overall, the better team was Mongols. You go look at the fragging. NQZ at the time also smurfed. He's having a great major so far, by the way. Never expected that from him. Senzu played great, but you know what? It was a group stage game, wasn't it? He played fairly well against FaZe, but I still haven't seen the peak Senzu. So if we go to this matchup, the first things first is they have added DGT, and that is a big deal. But let's do the veto. As I said, both teams ban Train. But it's only the last few times, something like 5 or 6 times, that paiN's banned Train, because they've swapped their ban. It used to be Ancient. Now, bearing in mind, Mongols always respects the Train ban. The only time they didn't is against G2 at this tournament, where it ended up on Anubis as their ban. They floated it, and G2 didn't pick it. So I guess they knew that would happen. Aside from that, they will ban. So I think because they're a team that have been scared on stage, they will just ban Train and actually give a mild veto, not advantage, but give like a pass over to paiN, which will help make it not as bad for paiN, a less painful veto, even though it'll actually be a more paiN-related veto. So as a result, this is obvious as a veto. If you're Mongols, You ban train, that's just what you're going to do. As a result, paiN can go, I don't have to ban that. Now I can ban the Ancient. Now that's awesome for you, because that has always been a really good map for Mongols. I think it's their most comfortable map. I think it's their favourite map overall. They certainly like Mirage too. So you at least get one of their good maps out of the equation. Now when you get that out of the equation, Mongols' favourite map to pick isn't even Ancient anyway, by the way. It's actually Mirage. Now, will they pick Mirage? Well, the good news is it's your second favourite map to pick anyway with paiN. So it's one you like to play, but yes, unsurprisingly, sample size, you haven't had as many with this roster, they've had way more, and we're going to check, unsurprisingly, Mongols is going to be a better team on this map, aren't they? You beat VP once, lost to them in OT, lost to MIBR, and beat Hotu. Wait a minute, Hotu? Let me just check that a second, because I think that's the... Oh, this is just the core even. Yeah, well, look, that doesn't even count, because I'm pretty sure the Hotu one was with the fucking coach standing in. Yeah, the coach was there. No DGT. Then you look at Mongols. FaZe, Aurora, barely lost to Vitality, beat this Furia, beat Na'Vi, beat Furia. This is the real Furia. This is the one that actually, I think is this the one where it was... Falcons came back, but they won the Mirage against Falcons, the one with Dexter in the roster, before m0NESY joined. So a decent win. You lost to Na'Vi on it way back. Like, you are a better team on Mirage. I'll give you that. So you should probably win Mirage, but it can be contested. We'll certainly see in the NQZ 9-10 battle. They're two people who can be quite inconsistent, especially in like a playoff scenario. So I imagine you will get the Mirage pick. Although, by the way, if you wanted to get spicy, you could also go and do an Inferno pick. If you're Mongols, you've done that occasionally. I think that would be a fun angle. It's actually a map often, by the way, that Mongols will second veto. So I would say they look like they're weaker there if you want to get them with a surprise factor. Now, in terms of the pick for paiN, paiN's most picked map at the moment is actually Nuke. That's not a terrible map to pick in the Mongols. Lost to MOUZ close. Beat Vitality on it, but that was a shock. Got smashed by Vitality, smashed by MOUZ. Barely beat the Brazilian Furia. Barely lost to BetClick from Poland. So that's not a bad pick if you want to go with it. It's always been a comfort for Big Azera, in my opinion. Otherwise, they themselves pick Mirage. And then after that, they do an Anubis. Now, I do not believe they're going to pick the Anubis. Sorry, I just do not believe it. Especially because Mongols is now... beaten fucking FaZe on it. So I think you just skip the Anubis entirely. You probably just do the Nuke pick. I think the Nuke pick makes sense here. Especially if they're going to pick Mirage. That means you get two maps you like anyway and two of your favourite picks as the first two maps. It's the best chance possible if you're paiN. Then we go to the Decider. For the Decider, the most vetoed second map from Mongols is Dust 2. Which isn't a map, by the way, that paiN picks. After Dust 2, it's Nuke. So if you don't pick Nuke, by the way, if you were to pick whatever, something else bizarre, if you pick the Anubis, they will probably veto Nuke, so you're not going to get that then. So the Decider, I mean, at this point in time, it could be a Dust 2, right? Could be Inferno. It depends what happens with Nuke, because I think Mongols have a second veto Nuke. Depends what you do. It could be all over. It could be the Mirage if you picked differently and tried to get spicy. Maybe they pick the Dust 2 and get cheeky. I doubt it also, by the way, because here's another factor to consider. I think both of these teams are going to be very nervous and they don't have super deep map pools and they're not very experienced in a massive major semi-final and their opponent's weak. So in theory, I think this is an example where both teams sort of just shake hands, do the veto that's expected and then just let the chips fall where they may, see what happens with the mouse and the crosshairs. So if we just go to here and have a look at the last 3 months for both teams, for the players. I have to go back. I just realised I fucked that up. There you go. It's going to be the same for the Mongols anyway, but I'll do it just to show I'm doing the same thing. So the immediate problem you have in paiN so far is obviously the first couple of events were kind of whack for you. and you hadn't gotten the firepower out of the players. You got some, but you've got nowhere near what you want. Say what you like about Mongols. That is better. Look, it's debatable on the KD, but it is better overall. I mean, there's more maps as well. Way more. Almost twice as many. Well, over twice as many. The problem so far is NQZ or AWP is your top fragger. But in theory, these are the two guys you brought in to do the damage. Now, veto is a pretty good fragging IGL. That's already a problem for paiN though. Mongols has a better fragging IGL. I actually don't know if Blitz is a better IGL than veto. I think that's debatable, but I think he's a slightly better fragger. So you go look at these players. T side, this DGT guy is doing so much work for you. Your AWP's not particularly good. CT side, your AWP farms. And then the other two, you'd expect, that's pretty good, but you'd expect like more from DGT. veto's having to do a lot of it for you. You go to the opening kills. DGT's doing very well. He's carrying your T side. Look at that, 60%. Now it's only 21% attempt rates. Snow's doing all right, especially for a 17-year-old rookie. In general, most of you are doing all right. Not so great for Davides. Kind of bad for veto. This guy's just an AWPer, so he's lurking. Now let's go and look on the side of Mongols. On T side, your fragging's not been that crazy. I don't think Mongols gets by on crazy firepower T side to me. Not even because the numbers are low. They get by on like hitting you with a good timing and really fast coordinated pushing in on you. CT side, they have very good fragging. For a team that you don't think of as stars and all hit shield team top 20, this is very good KD. So the problem now is this. FaZe has an underpowered currently firepower T side, but with a good IGL. And they're going to run into this CT side. As you saw from FaZe, it's going to be hard work. It's going to be hard fucking work. You go and look. Now, here's a factor for the guys from paiN, which is they don't have bonkers success rates on the opening. They just have good. Like, this is pretty good, but Senzu doesn't attempt that many. 9-10 attempts quite a lot for an AWPer, actually, by the way. Fair play to him. He's an aggressive AWPer. He's more the Brokey style AWPer for me, even though Brokey was being super baity this year. But you think of old Brokey or a JW or something, that's a very good success rate. It's a pretty good one. It's all right for Mizinho. The problem here, obviously, is if you're paiN, look, your players could all choke their tits off, but you're hoping Senzu chokes his tits off. I thought Mizinho's had some bad performances at this tournament. Techno normally doesn't ever top frag. 9-10 was kind of the guy who's carried you to this point. Senzu's been a lot of a group stage merchant. He had some good rounds in that half, in that series against FaZe. So this is kind of a messy semi, but I do favour it heavily over to Mongols. I think in theory, it should on paper be like a 2-0 for these guys. I think I did a 2-1 just because I thought it would be like inexperience. It'll be back and forth. You can call yourself through a messy match if you're veto. Plus, you're not playing like super crazy names on the server that are intimidating, like a Simple, a Nico, all that coming on the kill feed. You're just seeing normal people on there. I do think you've got a chance if you're paiN. Now, sadly, if paiN wins, I think there is zero chance they can win the major. If Mongols wins, it's not like it cannot happen. The problem is, though, if they play Vitality, it's extremely low. Like, I might, for real, just make it like 10% chance. I don't even know if they'd win 1 out of 10. No, because the problem is Vitality bans, perma-bans Ancient. So I actually, you know what, I think I would actually put the chance of Mongols winning the major if they make the final at something absurd. Like, look, this isn't how gambling works, but I'm talking about what I think of as if 100 scenarios played out. It'd have to be something like 5%. 5 times out of 100, they win that one. And that probably includes the one where Ziwu gets food sickness, Apex broke up with his girlfriend, you know, whatever the fuck would have to happen. Someone busted their hand, Rops busted his hand, fucking gooning or whatever the joke would be. Then if paiN make it, there's just no chance whatsoever. Now, the only one scenario for these two teams to win the major is if MOUZ makes the final. Could MOUZ choke? Yeah. They might even be buoyed up a la FaZe at the last 2 majors by winning against all the big dogs and then fucking up in the final against the underdog. Plus, you think about, look, I still don't think paiN would beat MOUZ, but could Mongols beat MOUZ? Doesn't seem like it's impossible, right? We'll go and have a look. They played MOUZ at Dallas. It was very close. It was in the semi-finals. Admittedly, Exertion had an average-ass series. So maybe if MOUZ pulls off their own upset over Vitality, potentially the greatest team ever, by the way, literally has won 32 LAN Best of X series in a row. Incredible. Probably the best streak ever in CS2, CS2. There's some amazing streaks in CS 1.6, but people just don't know about them. If MOUZ beats Vitality somehow, then maybe the Mongols can win. But even then, you'd probably put Mongols like 35% chance to win the series, maybe 30% chance to win the series. You even look at that veto quickly. Nah, there's not really any reason, is there? This one was close, but it wouldn't be every time, in my opinion. So no, I think you're in really, really tough position if you're either of those two teams in the second semi-final. Look, it's already enormous for your careers you've made this semi. I mean, if you're Mongols, you get to say on paper, I beat Carrigan and Simple and Legion. That sounds awesome. If you're the guys from paiN, admittedly, you beat Furia. Look, K-Serato's great. The rest of them, not so much anymore. That's nothing yet. If you beat Mongols, that is something. Then you probably lose to Vitality. You have a lot to gain from this major. But I actually don't think either teams it's even plausible. So the main narratives for me is, one, does Vitality go and get 34 series wins in a row and win the major and have an era, become the greatest CS2 team ever? And by the way, you can already then start having the convo with Astralis. Yeah, Astralis won more majors. Yeah, we're talking about eye test, quality, how you dominated map pool, style of play, what you did with your players, etc., what the era was like, how competitive it was, people having coached. There's a million facts. If MOUZ wins it, it's historic. Maybe they're going to kind of get over the hump, and maybe they'll go on to be a champion and battle back and forwards with Vitality over the next few months and Falcons and whatever happens there. That would be kind of cool, wouldn't it? Or Spirit if they upgrade their roster. Who knows what happens with FaZe and Na'Vi. After that, Mongols is maybe some crazy outsider. Making the finals already incredible. They should have a fucking ticker tape parade for them. And paiN's already done too much. Like, I don't even think they're going to make the fight. If they do, incredible. Who could ever even imagine as much? You know, I'm always rep my set. And the people who've got my back are the following people who support my videos. Matt Pugnatio, Rajcula, Jasun, Jensen Goh, Tosh, Toucan, and you know, the all-time ride or die, Jerky's minion, isn't it? Special thanks to him. Do you want to suggest a topic or a guest for my content? Want to find out who the upcoming interview subjects are? Do you want to take part in one of those long discussions with me where you set the topics? Maybe you want to ask me a question for my video AMA? Well, all of those perks and more are available where? At the Patreon link in the description box below. So put your money where your mouth is and join the Screwminati today. You dig?